The year of our Lord, 1396. A bone-deep chill has settled in the hallowed halls of Westminster Abbey, a cold that seeps through stone and spirit alike. My breath, a fleeting ghost in the autumn air, mists before my face as I clutch my prayer book. Quiet, such a palpable sense of a world tilting on its axis. When the great oak doors groan open, a collective gasp ripples through the assembled nobility. King Richard II, at 29, is every inch the monarch. Tall and regal, his golden hair a halo in the light streaming through the stained glass windows, he moves with a practiced grace. But it is the figure beside him that steals the breath from my lungs. A child, a tiny girl, barely reaching his elbow, her small hand utterly engulfed in his gloved one. She cannot be more than 6 or 7, this little princess, her elaborate French gown weighing her down, the pearls in her dark braids seeming too heavy a burden for her small head. I steady myself against the altar rail, the cold stone a grounding force against the surreal spectacle. This is Isabella of Valois, the new Queen of England. I have seen brides of 12, even 11. Political matches are the grim reality of our uncertain world. The Great Plague, a half-century gone, still haunts our memories, a stark reminder of life's fragility. Kings must forge alliances, and marriages are the wax that seals the treaties. As the ceremony commences, I watch the child's face. She is not frightened, but curious, her large dark eyes absorbing the grandeur around her. The soaring Gothic arches, the sea of flickering candles, the kaleidoscope of silks and velvets. When King Richard speaks his vows, his voice is a gentle murmur, strangely protective. This is no lecherous beast claiming a child bride for his own foul purposes. This is a king weary of war, fulfilling a solemn duty. The marriage, it is understood, will not be consummated for many years. The little queen will be raised at the English court, a cherished ward, until she comes of age. It is the way of things. With a steady voice that belies the tremor in my soul, I bless their union, pronouncing them husband and wife before God and man. And as I watch this tiny girl, now a queen, I cannot help but wonder what fate awaits her in this treacherous game of thrones. Isabella was born not to a fairy tale, but to a gilded cage. The Louvre Palace in Paris, her first home, was a place of shimmering opulence and chilling instability. Her father, King Charles VI of France, was a man tormented by demons, his mind a fragile vessel prone to shattering. Known to history as Charles the Mad, his reign was a chaotic dance between lucidity and lunacy. Imagine a little girl's world where her father one day showers her with affection, his laughter echoing through the sun-drenched halls, and the next, he is cowering in a corner, screaming of assassins, his eyes wide with a terror she cannot comprehend. Sometimes he believed he was made of glass, standing motionless for hours, convinced that a single step would shatter him into 1,000 pieces. During these episodes, servants would spirit the children away, but the fear lingered, a cold shadow in Isabella's young heart. Her mother, Isabella of Bavaria, was a woman of formidable strength and cunning, a political chess master trying to hold a kingdom together. She saw in her eldest daughter not just a child to be cherished, but a precious asset, her beauty and royal blood a key to forging a crucial alliance. The world beyond the palace walls was a landscape of devastation. For nearly 60 years, the 100 Years' War had raged, a brutal, bloody conflict that had bled both England and France dry. By the 1390s, both kingdoms were exhausted, their treasuries empty, their people yearning for peace. And so, in the grand theater of European politics, a 6-year-old girl was cast in the leading role. The proposal was audacious, the hand of the French king's daughter, a dowry of 800,000 francs, and a 28-year truce.
For Richard II, still mourning the death of his beloved first wife, Anne of Bohemia, it was an offer he could not refuse. His counselors were divided, some balking at the bride's tender age, others seeing the wisdom in securing peace and replenishing the royal coffers. But Richard, it was said, was moved by the miniature portrait of Isabella. He saw not just a political pawn, but a child in need of protection, a chance to be a father as well as a husband. And so, in the autumn of 1396, 7-year-old Isabella, draped in a gown of cloth of gold so heavy she could barely walk, was married to the King of England. A year later, she was crowned queen in Westminster Abbey, the crowd so massive that several people were crushed to death in the throng, a grim omen for the reign to come. For a time, Isabella's life was a gentle idyll. Richard, true to his word, was a kind and attentive guardian. He visited her daily, bringing her gifts, exotic birds, rare books, finely crafted musical instruments. She, in turn, grew to adore him, her childish affection a balm to his weary soul. She had her own apartments, a household of French and English attendants, and a companion in Margaret Holland, a girl just 2 years her senior, who taught her English games and the treacherous currents of court politics. Why did the English nobles watch each other so? Isabella once asked Margaret, her young mind sharp and observant. In France, there are quarrels, but here, everyone seems to be waiting. Margaret, wise beyond her years, explained the simmering resentments, the old rebellions, the whispers that the king was weak, too eager for peace. Isabella absorbed these lessons, her understanding of the world expanding beyond the walls of her protected childhood. But symbols of peace are fragile things in a world of ambitious men.
The first tremor of the coming earthquake came in early 1399. The air at court grew thick with unspoken anxieties. Richard's visits became less frequent, his face etched with a worry he could not hide. His cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, whom he had exiled, had returned with an army. And the nobles, like wolves sensing a wounded stag, began to flock to his banner. The world Isabella had known crumbled with terrifying speed. One morning, she awoke to find her English ladies-in-waiting gone, their absence a silent scream of warning. That evening, Margaret burst into her chambers, her face pale with fear. "You must pack," she whispered, her voice tight with urgency. "We are going to the Tower." The journey through the darkened streets of London was a terrifying ordeal. The Tower, a place of both palace and prison, loomed before them, its grim silhouette a stark symbol of their new reality. Richard came to see her there, his transformation a shocking blow. The kind, confident king was gone, replaced by a man haunted by the specter of his own downfall. "My dear child," he said, his voice raw with a pain that tore at her heart, "I may not be able to protect you as I once could."
For the first time, he spoke to her not as a child, but as an equal, explaining the brutal arithmetic of power and betrayal. "What will happen to me?" she asked, her voice a small, steady flame in the gathering darkness. "I don't know," he admitted, his honesty a more terrifying answer than any lie. A few weeks later, the heavy tread of armed men echoed in the corridor, and the door to her chambers swung open. Henry Bolingbroke, now Henry IV, stood before her, his eyes cold and calculating. He was the new king, and she, the child queen, was now a valuable prisoner, her fate hanging in the balance of his ambition. The news of Richard's death, rumored to be a brutal murder in the dungeons of Pontefract Castle,
was a devastating blow. He had been her protector, her friend, the only father she had known in this foreign land. With his death, the last vestiges of her English life were severed, and she was adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Henry IV, a pragmatic and ruthless ruler, saw in Isabella both a threat and an opportunity. He offered her a choice: return to France, but only if she acknowledged his legitimacy and renounced her claim to the English throne. At 10 years old, she was forced to make a decision that would shape the future of two kingdoms.
In the summer of 1401, Isabella returned to France, a stranger in her own land. She had left as a child, and now she returned as a young woman, her French tinged with an English accent, her heart heavy with a grief her family could not understand. Her father, in the throes of his madness, did not recognize her. Her mother, ever the strategist, saw in her a valuable pawn for future political games. Caught between two worlds, Isabella navigated the treacherous currents of the French court with a wisdom and grace that belied her years. She was a former queen, a symbol of a failed peace, a young woman with a unique and dangerous knowledge of the English court. In 1406, at the age of 16, she was married again, this time to her cousin, Charles, Duke of Orleans. He was a man of passion and intellect, a poet and a warrior, and he saw in her not a political asset, but a woman of remarkable strength and resilience. "I am not seeking to marry the former Queen of England," he told her, his words a balm to her wounded soul. "I am seeking to marry Isabella of Valois." For a few brief years, Isabella found a happiness she had never known. Their court was a haven of culture and refinement, a world away from the grim realities of power politics. She bore him a daughter, and in the quiet moments of motherhood, she found a profound sense of peace. But the world outside their idyllic bubble was still a place of violence and betrayal. The assassination of Charles's father plunged them into the heart of a brutal civil war. The cultured, artistic man Isabella had married was forced to become a hardened warrior, and she, his duchess, became his partner in governance. Her political acumen, honed by years of surviving the treacherous courts of two kingdoms. Pregnancies took a toll on her fragile health, each child a precious gift that chipped away at her own life force. Complications from the birth of her third child left her weakened, a shadow of her former self. But still she persevered, her spirit a defiant flame against the encroaching darkness. Isabella of Valois, the child queen of England, the beloved Duchess of Orleans, died in the autumn of 1409 at the age of 20. She had lived a lifetime in her 2 short decades, a pawn who had become a player, a symbol who had forged her own identity. Her legacy is not one of tragedy, but of quiet triumph. In a world that sought to define her, she defined herself. In an age of cruelty and chaos, she championed kindness and culture. Her story, a forgotten footnote in the grand sweep of history, is a poignant reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can shine with a brilliant, unwavering light. She was a queen, a wife, a mother, a leader, and in the end, she was simply Isabella, a woman who, against all odds, had found her own way home.